Support for Higher Education in Focus comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, serving alumni and alma mater for more than 145 years. On the web at alumni.psu.edu. Penn State Bookstore, now in an expanded location in the Hub Robeson Center. Improving the student experience at Penn State with philanthropic support of student causes throughout the university. PSECU, a credit union providing financial services to its members throughout Pennsylvania since 1934. More at psecu.com. And from viewers like you, thank you.
As college enrollment continues to increase, students face stiff competition for a limited number of slots. Last year, Penn State received more than 66,000 residential undergraduate applications. Of those, roughly 16,000 were admitted. When is the best time to submit your application? How will your application be evaluated? And should you consider applying to an honors program? In this edition of Higher Education in Focus, Penn State President Eric Barron will focus on taking the mystery out of the admissions process. Here to talk with him is Clark Brigger, Executive Director for Undergraduate Admissions at Penn State, Bert McBrayer, Associate Director for Admissions Operations in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions, and Mitch Kirsch, Associate Dean for Student Affairs at the Schreyer Honors College. I'll be back later in the show to talk one-on-one with President Barron with questions from a student's perspective. Now, here's Penn State President Eric Barron.
Well, welcome. So, 66,000 applications, that seems like an enormous number for the number of undergraduates, and total 131,000 this year, and 6,000 more than last year, 18,000 more than the year before. So, let's take a little bit of the mystery out of this whole process. And so maybe you could, Clark, you could walk us through the application process for Penn State.
Sure. So we have an online application that it's a homegrown application that we host, and it's dynamically related within the application. So you can choose an academic major that you want to study, and it will only present the campuses where that's available. Or you can choose a campus where you want to study, and it will only present the majors that are available. So you submit the application electronically to us, which then feeds into our student information system. And beyond that, we need a high school transcript and a set of test scores from the testing agency to complete the application. And we would recommend to students that they complete their application with all three of those pieces by the end of November. So November 30th is what we call our priority filing date, because at the beginning of the season, as you well know, we have all of the admits that we can admit available. And then successively through the year, as we make some admit decisions, the opportunity narrows.
So what makes it smart?
Yes.
The tool smart.
Well, so it's dynamically related, as I talked about. So depending upon what you select in a certain area, it changes the application down the road.
Doesn't matter whether it's Commonwealth Campus, University Park? Same.
One and the same.
Now, do we say the same thing for Schreyer's? You have a different application process?
We have an application process that's actually integrated into the undergraduate admissions application. So a student who's applying to Penn State will have the opportunity to apply to Schreyer at the same time in the same process. So there's a question in the undergraduate application that asks if you're interested in the Schreyer Honors College. Then you can indicate that on the application, and then you'll get the access to our additional questions. We ask some additional questions to be considered for Schreyer, and so by indicating that on the undergraduate application, you can apply to Schreyer. And again, it's seamless through the entire system. So whether you're looking at coming to University Park or any other campus, you can do the same application.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Do we have the same process as every other university out there?
Absolutely not. So a lot of other universities are on the common application.
Right.
And next year there's actually a new rendition or a new application that will be coming out called the coalition application. And a lot of institutions have their own application as well. You know, it turns into a process for a student to choose and narrow the number of universities that they want to attend, and try to figure out, you know, what is the best way, what are the different avenues as far as how to apply to that specific institution.
Any surprises in that new platform?
You know, it's really in the formative stages, listening to the constituents, the students and the high school counselors, and trying to develop it to make it as seamless as possible for a student, emphasizing ease of use, access, affordability, and success, which seem to align perfectly for Penn State.
Well, good. You know, I've met a lot of people that wait to the very last minute to do. You rolled your eyes there, so that was, you've met a few people like that too, I see. So just to tell people, how much time is a good amount of time to plan for you to do the application process?
Yeah, we would recommend that they complete the process now, because what happens, as you said, a lot of students procrastinate. In the neighborhood of 10,000 students procrastinate until the last couple of days. So imagine a python snake swallowing a basketball at the deadline date. And that basketball has to work itself through that snake, which is our processing of the application. So it you know, induces a lot of stress in the system when it's not spread out.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to me that a python swallowing a basketball makes for a happy python either. You know,
it sure doesn't.
Not at all.
So Bert, you get to participate this on the side of the python swallowing the basketball. So what do you do with 67,000 applications? What's the process for going through all that?
Sure. So the process of reviewing the application, as Clark mentioned, we can't begin to look at applications until we've received all of the documentation, supplemental, so the high school transcript and either SAT or ACT scores from the testing agencies. And so once those supplements have joined that student's application that they submitted, then we start the evaluation process. And the process of evaluating an applicant for kind of your traditional aged first year, you know, senior in high school, going to college, is wholly academic. We're looking at the student's performance in high school, and that's going to be the bulk of the weight in the admission decision. But we also do look at the student's SAT or ACT scores as part of that process. So based on the student's performance in high school and on the tests, we would then look at the competitive nature of the applicant pool. And this is where that November 30th applicant priority filing date is very important, because we review applications in pool groups, or I tell families in chunks. And the first chunk of applicants we review is anybody who completed an application by that November 30th date that Clark mentioned. That's when criteria for admission to a student's first choice campus or program is going to be at its least competitive. As the cycle continues, we are on a rolling admission pool-based cycle. Throughout the year, then the criteria for admission becomes more competitive for students. So if a student waits, again, kind of following the procrastinator, if a student waits to, if a student waits till March to apply, then that's going to most likely limit the options they have at the university. So that's the students who complete that application by November 30th, they're at their best shot for an offer of admission to their first choices. And so we would review the application and notify the student of their decision. If they're admitted, they would receive the offer of admission and all of the information that goes with that. If they are not admitted, if we cannot offer admission to a student based on the criteria that we're looking at, we would present them with other options. Typically, students have options at Penn State. It's just a matter of what are your options at the university.
Okay, so you do it in a chunk, and it makes a difference to go early. But I always sort of imagine with so many thousands of applicants, you're looking at a group and saying, great student, no problem, they're in. Oh no, you don't have a chance. and it's that middle section that becomes a challenge. Is that a good way to look at it?
I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So the on the bubble kind of question that we get from
so
families.
that's more work if you're on the bubble than it is. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So there's those students who are kind of clearly admissible to their first choice campus or their first choice program, and they go through the process. Then there are those students who we would decline admission to their first choice and say, you still have options at Penn State. Reach out to us and let us know what you'd like to do. The folks in the middle, then, they're going to receive a little bit more of a thorough scrub, so to speak. We do have an admission review committee that looks at students. So for example, if a student has some kind of extenuating circumstance in their sophomore year, something happened that it's clear that there was something going on in their life, that their academic performance dropped freshman year and junior year, it's much higher. So we would look at those on a case-by-case basis.
So that I see. So it does, even with that many applicants, you can take the time to look at special circumstances.
Sure.
So a process for looking at the applicant. How many applicants do you get for Schreyer?
We're a little different. Last year we got 3,710 applications
for how many?
For Schreyer, for 300 spaces. So every year we've seen an increase in applications, and it's growing more and more competitive. And our process is a little different from the standpoint that we do encourage our applicants to also apply by November 30th, keeping with Penn State's priority filing date. But we actually stop our application on January 15th. We actually bring down our application on the 15th of January, and we're not on a rolling process. We will announce all of our decisions
at one time,
usually early part of March, so everybody knows. And the biggest difference, I think, is that since we have 3 additional essays and some short answer questions where we're finding more about applicants as far as their activities and leadership, and we also ask for 2 letters of recommendation from our applicants. So we have a faculty review committee who are honors faculty, who are reading the applications. Every application is read by 2 different faculty members.
All 3,000?
Independently. All 3,700 of them are read by 2 faculty, read them independently and rate them, and primarily looking at all the information they supply in the application. The transcript is certainly heavily reviewed, looking to make sure the student is an honors student in their high school. We do not look at standardized tests in Schreyer. A lot of people don't believe us, but we really don't. Obviously, it's important to Penn State's decision, but I think most of our faculty have found that the SAT or ACT is not a distinguishing factor. Most of our students do pretty well on a standardized test, so when we only have limited spaces, it doesn't help us. 5%
points different is
doesn't
not
make a difference.
No. Yeah.
But the transcripts, the kind of academic rigor in a student's high school and how they did, and also the activities and leadership that they've been involved in, fit into the Schreyer mission, and that's what we're looking for, and that's where the students do separate themselves. So they will review all those applications, put individual ratings on each of the applications, and then the students with the higher ratings will get the offers of admission. So it is very competitive. And I guess the one thing too I should mention, that the difference between the November 30th deadline and the January 15th deadline is the fact that if you apply by the end of November, you have the option to do an admissions interview. And it is optional, but we have alumni all over the world, literally, who are interviewing our applicants. And if you do the interview, certainly that can be part of the review process as well.
Does it turn out to be an advantage?
It does. It does. We have seen the last few years that the students who are interviewing actually have about a 7% higher rate of offer than those who do not.
Interesting. So now let's take a little bit more of the mystery out of the selection, because I hear all the time preferences, okay? So I go off to an Ivy and Dad went there, and that's a preference. Is it a preference here?
Well, I would say that legacy plays a factor. Everything about an applicant plays a factor. The high school that they attended is a factor, and how they challenged that curriculum and how well they did with that challenge. So all of these things, how many activities that they've been involved in, did they have leadership in those things? All of those things enhance your picture of the applicant. So I think it does matter to some degree. I think any institution has to be aware of who their alumni are, and it does matter.
So it's a little bit of an edge.
Absolutely.
To have mom and dad and grand. Okay, so let's let's try another. I give you a big donation. Can I get my child in?
So the student has to be academically qualified.
That's the bottom line. No matter what, they have to be academically
development,
qualified.
Legacy, you name it. They have to be academically qualified. At any juncture, I think that's the baseline.
The first thing you say with every single applicant is they must be academically qualified.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We get that question a lot, particularly with student athlete recruits too.
Yeah.
Is that a factor? And sure, being recruited as an athlete at the Division I level, that's a factor. But at the end of the day, a student has to meet the academic criteria for admission to the university.
So I could ask you a whole group of questions and I might hear the exact same answer, because I've watched some institutions deliberately accept a couple thousand more international students because they pay more. So do we look at them and say, now we're going to go deeper into the pool here because we want to have those extra dollars? Or is it the same answer?
Yeah, no. So, we try and keep the incoming class international population.
And being very diverse. So this is an intent.
Right,
but
right. But we want it to be geographically diverse, worldwide. But, it can also be overwhelming. There are institutions out there that go very deep into China, as an example, and have 1,000 Chinese international students on their campus. Well, we don't want that. We want great diversity because it's going to lend to the learning environment.
And I will say, certainly from an honors perspective, the academic qualifications are really first and foremost, because with such few seats in the Honors College, and I think that the fact that this is the top 3% of students at Penn State, the legacy, the relationships really are relevant, because you have to demonstrate the strength in the classroom.
Very best.
Absolutely, that's key.
Yeah. So, what about for first in your family? Do we look at those differently? I mean, many universities consider this to be a challenge to get them to graduate, and they may actually shy away a little bit because they like their yields to be high and their graduation rates to be high, and it's more challenging for a student like that perhaps to fill out an application.
Right.
Do we look at them differently?
So to some degree, I would say. I'm a first-generation student myself, and a first-generation student does not have the resources at home, the knowledge of the process from their parents that other students do have. So we know that they have had to work hard and perform well, and there has been some struggle involved for them. So I can't say that it's easier for them to get in, but it's definitely a consideration in the process that they are a first-generation student, and we want to level the playing field, so to speak.
And we certainly recognize that's Penn State's mission. That's who we are as a land-grant institution, and even as the Honors College within it, that's who we want to be as well. We want to reflect the residents of Pennsylvania, and certainly when students are applying to the Honors College, we're not going to penalize them because they may have gone to a rural high school where there are no AP classes. That's okay. They can still be an excellent student and an outstanding leader in that environment.
What about second chances? Well, you didn't quite make this. Go take this course or this course, you might have a chance. Or Schreyer's, I've gone to a Commonwealth campus, and I'm a great student. Have I lost my chance?
No, within Schreyer, fortunately, we have something called a gateway process, where because we can only take 300 students coming in as freshmen, we do have the opportunity for continuing Penn State students to apply after their first or second year at Penn State, and the decision's purely based on your performance at Penn State. So if you're a late bloomer, the gateway to Schreyer is a perfect opportunity.
With regard to the rest of kind of the general population, the idea of second chances is something that we do talk about with students and families. In most cases, a student is probably going to have options at Penn State, and that may be their local Commonwealth campus in their region. But it also, if the student performed, I don't want to say exceptionally poorly, because that's kind of a dichotomy, but if a student really struggled in high school and just did not do well, we might advise that student to say, hey, there's a local community college in your area, so if you're from Philadelphia, go take a couple of classes at the Community College of Philadelphia, and then apply as a transfer student. And we do see a lot of students who do that, particularly if there is a community college local to them that's local to another Penn State Commonwealth campus.
In a last statement, if you were to give one bit of advice to a student that was applying and hoping to come to Penn State, obviously 131,000 were, what? I'm going to ask each of you, what bit of advice would you offer them?
So getting back to the November 30th, apply and complete that application by November 30th. The early bird gets the worm. I mean, that's the kind of
great advice.
The philosophy.
Yep.
Right, so I've got children of the college and high school age myself, and that has been some of my advice to them and their friends throughout the process is get it done, submit your applications, and let the decisions come to you. You're in high school, you need to worry about your senior year and to continue to perform well, and you need to enjoy your senior year at the same time. So submit your applications.
But not too much, right?
Right, absolutely.
Very simply, I will just say be authentic and enjoy the process. I know there's so much pressure on kids these days for applying to college, and I think it's unfortunate because it should be a fun process for you and your family. So take a look around, present your authentic self when you apply so people know who you are when you're submitting your application. Don't try to be somebody you're not.
Well, thank you. I suspect we did take a little mystery out of that application process for tens of thousands of students from the Commonwealth and around the world. Thank you very much.
Great.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Next up on Higher Education in Focus, I'll talk one-on-one with President Barron about the admissions process from a student's perspective. Students have so many choices when it comes to what university or college to apply for. So why Penn State? What makes a Penn State education so unique?
Great brand, highly visible, huge alumni group that will help you out there in the world, wherever you are in the world. A history of having great jobs at the end of your education, and a real sense of community and spirit that makes it fun to be on campus, and a very high quality faculty.
You just talked with a lot of admissions experts on what it takes to get into Penn State, but what does it take to really succeed at Penn State?
Well, I will tell you this, there's step one, go to class, study, and do well, and there's another part of it, and that is to become engaged. And the more engaged you are in doing worthwhile activities, the more likely you're going to build a strong resume, that you're going to enhance the education in a classroom, the greater peer group you will have because they will also be engaged. So do well in class and become engaged in worthwhile activities that will serve you later on in life.
That's very true. And, a lot of newspapers and magazines come out with rankings every year, such as U.S. News and World Report. A lot of people look at those media outlets, parents, student perspective.
They do.
And in your perspective, what do those numbers really mean?
Okay, so they are numbers that a university can't ignore. They can't ignore because especially good students want to go to the highest ranked university they can. And we have a very high rank, and so you pay attention to those rankings because it's an important signal. Now you dig into them and you discover there's some parts of the rankings that you can be extremely proud of. In our case, we graduate students way above what's predicted by the economic and social characteristics of our student body. That's a great metric to have, and it helps raise our ranking. There are others, like how much money you spend, probably a little less interesting.
So you did your undergraduate work at Florida State and your graduate work at the University of Miami.
Yep.
Can you speak on the value of a public versus a private education?
Okay, so publics have a mission, and that is to educate the students in the Commonwealth and the nation. And that also means we want to look like that population. We want to make sure that we serve everybody, whether or not you're financially disadvantaged, whether you're rural, whether you're in a city, and I really like that mission. And a private is a little bit different in terms of they don't have to have that mission. So I prefer a public mission.
One of the bigger issues or decisions students have to make once they're in the university is what are they studying? What's their major? And about 3/4 of students end up changing their major at least once. And some experts say, well, maybe they shouldn't decide until their second year. What is your perspective and your opinion on this debate?
I like students to have options. So I come in there and decided I wanted to study geology, That's exactly what I did, and that's what I did, and I loved it. And I ended up being a geosciences faculty member. So let's not disadvantage that student that's really driven and has a strong idea. At the same time, let's not create too much stress for a student that hasn't made up their mind, because we offer so many majors and so many opportunities. And if you compare it to a high school, and you say, okay, I love chemistry, and then you realize you have biochemistry and chemical engineering and this whole broad area. So I wouldn't want students to stress over that. On the other hand, if they wait too long, it takes them longer to graduate. It costs them more. So it's kind of a balancing act.
You know, it can be difficult to graduate within 4 years with one major, change of major, 2 majors. So how can the university help to guide students into that 4-year graduation?
Actually, we've got a whole group of initiatives that we're launching to help students succeed in a timely way, because the cost of your degree is really equivalent to the time it takes you to get your degree.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
On behalf of Penn State President Eric Barron, we'd like to thank our guests, Clark Brigger, Executive Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Penn State, Bert McBrayer, Associate Director for Admissions Operations, and Mitch Kirsch, Associate Dean for Student Affairs at the Schreyer Honors College. For Higher Education in Focus, I'm Lauren Doyle. Thanks for joining us.
Support for Higher Education in Focus comes from the Penn State Alumni Association, serving alumni and alma mater for more than 145 years. On the web at alumni.psu.edu. Penn State Bookstore, now in an expanded location in the Hub Robeson Center. Improving the student experience at Penn State with philanthropic support of student causes throughout the university. PSECU, a credit union providing financial services to its members throughout Pennsylvania since 1934. More at psecu.com. And from viewers like you, thank you.